Story 1. Most of the state is more like Of Mice and Men than Hollywood Confidential. Story 2. It's a big state and most of it isn't what people think California is like. I only went to the beach twice before the age of 18. I certainly didn't know anyone who surfed. I never went to Disneyland, Hollywood, or Los Angeles as a kid. I grew up on a dirt road in the mountains. Story 3. Northern California, including San Francisco and Sacramento, is about the geographic halfway point. The far northern part of California is often forgotten. Friends from the Midwest are surprised they need a hoodie on most summer nights. Story 4. My high school had an outdoor campus. It was a group of buildings, and between classes you went outside to get to the next building. I never ate in the high school cafeteria because I always wanted to be outside. My college in California was the same. Story 5. No, you cannot get to San Francisco from Los Angeles in 90 minutes. I still laugh at the poor women from Georgia who said they wanted to take a day trip to San Francisco. Madam, your whole day will be spent driving, 6 to 8 hours each way. Story 6. California is huge and is the most biologically diverse state in the United States. It is also home to the oldest, tallest, and largest trees. It has deserts, temperate rainforests, several peaks over 14,000 feet, and much more. It is so ecologically diverse that being from California can mean many different things. Story 7. If you grew up in California, you probably find basements strangely fascinating. I have only been in 1 or 2 houses in the state that had a basement. People from the East Coast do not understand why you get nervous around large, unreinforced brick buildings or heavy objects stacked on unsecured shelving racks. Story 8. Not everyone here is a rich coastal elite. Most Californians are ordinary people who scrape together a living. Story 9. The smell of the water on Pirates of the Caribbean is different between the Disneyland and Disney World versions. Story 10. I didn't grow up there. I moved there. One thing I noticed about friends who did grow up there was that many of them were fully comfortable with their ethnic heritage, including speaking their family's language, while also feeling fully confident and casual about being American. I was envious because in many other parts of the country you seem to have to choose. Story 11. I don't live there anymore, but when I did I noticed that people do not seem to realize that when we say California is diverse we mean you can find every type of person there. It is not all Los Angeles surfer dudes. Story 12. I will be lying in bed thousands of miles away from my birthplace and suddenly hear in my head at 2 in the morning, "Keys on Van Nuys." Story 13. Someone born in another state will know nothing about Cal Worthington. Story 14. We're not in a rivalry with your state. Growing up in California means you always hear from people in other states who think we're in a rivalry, but it's completely one-sided. Story 15. Lake Elsinore is not as pleasant as the name suggests. Story 16. You have a firm opinion about whether to say the before a freeway number, for example. Are you taking the 60 versus take 580? If you have spent a lot of time in both Southern California and Northern California, you can successfully code switch. Story 17. As an outsider, I love California. I travel between San Diego and Sacramento for a couple of months each year, and it is my favorite part of the job. I have never met so many happy, friendly people as I have there. That stands in contrast to New York City, which I also love. People there just seem more relaxed. Story 18. 1 in 8 Americans is a Californian. That seems to surprise most people. California is the economic engine of the United States, along with New York. Story 19. California is geographically large and does not have a single climate. It has mountains, forests, deserts, beaches, farms, mines, and oil wells. Californians make up nearly 12% of the population of the United States. California grows more than 12% of the crops in the United States, including more than half of the fruits and nuts produced in the United States. California produces 20% of the milk for the United States. California accounts for 14% of the gross domestic product of the United States. If California were a separate country, its economy would rank as the 5th largest in the world, behind only the United States, China, Germany, and Japan. Clearly, trying to lump Californians into a single stereotype is misguided. Story 20. The sky and riverbeds are full of dust. The vista is of oil fields. As children, we learn to pan for gold. Story 21. It is vast and diverse, with nearly every type of landscape. Mountains, forests, cold coastal towns, and desert. People from Newport Beach and Eureka will have very different experiences living there. Story 22. Awkward conversations with out-of-state residents, particularly in the Midwest and the South, who believe everything they see on television about California. Story 23. Northern and Southern Californians have different accents and dialects. Story 24. Hole-in-the-wall Mexican food in Southern California is different from that of Central and Northern California, and we all think the type we grew up eating is the right way. Most of us have never seen a movie star or someone famous just doing normal people stuff. I have, but the average Californian has not because California is such a large state. Story 25. Everything in the state contains chemicals known to the state of California to cause cancer and birth defects or other reproductive harm. Story 26. The United States believes California dislikes other states as much as those states dislike California. But the truth is you are not even on our minds. Story 27. Your idea of freezing cold and mine are two different things. To be honest, I also think winter is just an extended fall. Story 28. How badly you wanted to go to Anderson's pea soup on every road trip. Story 29. People think California is an out-of-work actor with long, blonde hair drinking a kale smoothie while surfing at the beach. But California is really an overweight mechanic with Dodger tattoos who is the funniest person you have ever met. Story 30. There is a casualness around language and culture. My girlfriend's family is from border states and the Upper South, Tennessee, Kentucky, and so on. When I slip into Spanish or even say a Spanish place name, they look at me like I have two heads. I am Asian, and my Spanish is much better than my parents' language. Most people raised in Southern California that I know speak at least a little Spanish by default. If you do not pick up 1 or 2 phrases a year, you are actively trying not to. Story 31. It is incredibly expensive in most large cities. People know it is more expensive, but they often do not fully experience that until they move there from another state. Real estate prices are insane, and many people from other parts of the country experience sticker shock. If you grow up there, you become accustomed and assume it is that expensive everywhere. Also, schools in Southern California often have open-air campuses, and many malls are open-air as well. That always surprised my cousins from the South. Story 32. This might be specific to my experience, but wearing a hoodie in 90 degrees Fahrenheit is more tolerable in California than in the Pacific Northwest. Story 33. Mexicans have always been part of the fabric of our lives. They were here first. Story 34. I am a third-generation San Diegan. We have May gray and June gloom. It will be overcast and chilly until around 2 p.m. each day when the marine layer burns off, especially at the beach. It generally does not start heating up until mid-August. September and October are our hottest months. If you want stereotypical sunny Southern California beach weather, do not visit until late summer or even fall. If you prefer gloomy weather, May and June are for you. Story 35. I am so accustomed to racial diversity that I find a predominantly white population genuinely unsettling. Story 36. You can't just go to the Department of Motor Vehicles or even show up expecting to get your driver's license that day. Story 37. Going to Disneyland for graduation night. I am so old that we had a dress code. Women had to wear dresses or jackets with dressy shorts. I graduated in 1991. Story 38. When you see a mountain lion, make yourself big and loud. You'll most likely be fine. Story 39. From the mountains to the sea, from the desert to the plains, you have everything in California. Most people do not realize the scale. Story 40. If you grew up here between 1980 and 2000, it was ingrained in you not to litter and to conserve water. To this day, I don't take longer than a 10-minute shower. Story 41. I saw theme park colonial architecture before I ever saw real colonial architecture. I thought the Southeast looked like Southern California because shows set there, for example the Andy Griffith Show, were filmed in Los Angeles. As a child I ate at Sizzler when the menu board had jagged, saw-toothed edges, but I did not realize what that represented until I saw a weathered sign with jagged edges in the Northeast in my 20s. My wife and I vacationed in Maine in March and had locals ask, "What are you doing here? It is not the season." I became accustomed to green freeway signs with clear directions and to right turns on red being legal. I was never more than about 30 miles from an ocean beach and about 60 miles from pine forest, then 30 more miles to a desert. I often spotted celebrities in odd places and routinely met scientists and artists socially. People teased me for being from the land of fruits and nuts. I dug in the ground and found adobe mud and rounded river rocks almost everywhere, and I saw palm trees regularly. It never seemed excessively hot, cold, or humid. I did not know to wear a sweater below 60 degrees. For a long time California was largely a Republican state. 2 presidents came from California and both were Republicans. One had been our governor first. I did not know that poor-quality Mexican food existed. Story 42. One can ski in the mountains in the morning and surf at the beach in the afternoon of the same day. Story 43. Southern California is more than Los Angeles. Orange County and San Diego are different from each other and from Los Angeles. Although I am not much of a fan of Los Angeles, I appreciate that it is large, diverse, and has a lot to offer. San Diego and Orange County do as well, to a lesser extent. That generally applies only to the coastal and central areas. I do not want to leave out the Inland Empire. Also, while it feels selfish or spoiled to complain about 80-degree days in November or even January, it does get old not having distinct seasons and being hot most of the year. Story 44. I grew up in the mountains in California. I've been closer to a dumpster-sized bear than to Mickey Mouse. Story 45. The ocean is cold as heck up and down the coastline. Only on a few days can you jump in and swim in your trunks. Story 46. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and I now live in Sacramento. They are completely different worlds. It feels like they should be 2 different states. Nothing is similar. I'm not against Sacramento. It just feels like a different planet. Story 47. As soon as 3 or more raindrops hit the road, drivers suddenly forget how to drive, causing a series of preventable traffic accidents. Story 48. Earthquakes are not that troublesome most of the time. Other states experience severe damage nearly every year from hurricanes and tornadoes, but earthquakes are usually small and may only knock a picture off a shelf. Strong, damaging earthquakes are rare and typically affect a limited area. Story 49. You can have a whole understandable conversation with another Californian where the only word actually spoken is dude. Story 50. Dude is a gender-neutral term that can describe a person, place, or thing and convey emotion. Story 51. People think living in Southern California is a dream because of the weather. The weather is great, but there comes a point where every day feels exactly the same. Winter, spring, summer, fall. The days all run together and you lose track of time. There is always something to do outdoors, a party, festival, or show, and instead of looking forward to the passage of time, that is, the seasons, you just look forward to the next event. This endless summer mentality can make you feel like there is no future to worry about and no consequences to consider as you float from the beach to the mountains to the city to the desert. Before you know it, 5 years have gone by, but it feels like half that time. Story 52. It is divided mainly into Southern California and the Bay Area. Southern California is what outsiders think of when they think California. There are movie stars in every classroom. Due to a geographical anomaly, surfing is the primary method of transportation, with convertible sports cars a distant second. The major freeways are Interstate 210, Interstate 405, and U.S. Highway 101. They are all 18 lanes and at a standstill most of the time. Highway 1 along the coast, however, is wide open and ready for a scenic drive with a soundtrack. Everyone carries a screenplay, except movie producers. who have contracts and wait to discover new actors and writers to sign to multimillion-dollar deals. Real estate is either a squalid shoebox apartment that costs $3,000 a month, great for telling people where you came from once you get your movie deal, or a $50 million mansion in the Hollywood Hills. All the mansions have pools with a boat in the pool, a hot tub in the boat, and a floating bar in the hot tub. The Bay Area is slightly different. Its borders extend from Eureka on the north, Folsom on the east, and Gilroy on the south. Anyone who lives there will tell you they live in the city, with the notable exception of Oakland. The residents of Oakland form an insular community and speak a dialect understood primarily by themselves. Silicon Valley is similarly geographically nebulous. Anyone within driving distance of San Jose on a single Tesla battery charge lives there. They refer to themselves as founders of ventures such as the ride-hailing service of light bulbs or an artificial intelligence-enabled toaster sharing service. They all drink green juices like smoothies made from grass and compete to spend the most money on clothes that may get them mistaken for a homeless person. The corridor between these areas is Interstate 5. It is a blasted hellscape inhabited only by unfortunate cattle and almond farmers with strong opinions about the United States Congress. A large number of people have argued that a city 2 hours away from San Francisco is not in the Bay Area. Geographical designations vary, but the earlier description included Davis, Gilroy, and Folsom. I stand by that assessment. Story 53. The fact that it can go from a neighborhood to an upscale area and back within a block or a mile. Story 54. People from other states are shocked to find out I don't own a surfboard, but I do own tire chains. I can't ride a skateboard, but I can ride a horse. I own guns, hunt, camp, and grow my own food. I have never taken a Pilates class or tried avocado toast. There are so many California stereotypes, and most of them revolve around a few coastal metro areas. Story 55. In Southern California, when we would go back to school in the fall, all the stores would be full of sweaters and cold weather clothing, even though it was 95 degrees outside. Story 56. You went to school with Hispanic children whose families had been here when this area was still part of Mexico. Story 57. My girlfriend says that most people do not understand that California has all four terrains: mountains, valleys, snow, deserts, beaches, and forests. Places like Alabama cannot understand what it is like to live in a cool place. Story 58. My valley voice is not a choice. I'm not imitating 80s movies. It's a real accent I was born with, and I can't get rid of it. Story 59. The major cities are not apocalyptic wastelands like Fox News says. They are mostly clean and normal. Story 60. I was born and raised in California for 33 years, living in Northern California, the Central Coast, and Southeast Los Angeles. No matter where I go, people always agree that Bakersfield sucks. Story 61. The Pacific Ocean along the coast is cold, rough, and mean. As a kid I body surfed, got smacked around, dragged out, and froze my huevos. Then I went to the beaches in North Carolina and it felt like falling asleep in a bathtub. Story 62. It's awesome. People who put it down are usually just jealous because they live in a shithole state. Story 63. It's a love-hate relationship with the city you live in. In my case, it's Los Angeles. I fucking love my stupid home. Story 64. At least in Southern California, at the right time of year, you can surf at the beach in the morning and snowboard in the mountains in the evening. Story 65. Much of the cuisine is fresh and high quality. Most other states cannot hold a candle to it. Story 66. I am a nearly lifelong resident of San Francisco, and I will say that in almost every election we vote to increase our own taxes for healthcare, childcare, education, transportation, and other services. We care about ourselves and about those who may not be doing as well. Do we have our limits? Of course. But ask almost any San Franciscan. Our cost of living is through the roof, and so is our quality of life. Nothing is perfect anywhere, but most of us understand it is a constant work in progress. Story 67. Imagining everything is going to catch on fire is just being careful, and getting very anxious when someone leaves the water running. Story 68. If you are in Southern California, Driving 35 miles to go to dinner is totally reasonable. Story 69. Excellent Mexican food and beautiful women are common, but once you move away you certainly notice them. Story 70. It is not a monolith. We have mountains, beaches, forests, valleys, and desert. There are many conservative residents. We have huge cities and tiny one-street towns that may only have a post office. Eastern California, especially the northern and central parts, is culturally very different from the coast. There is a lot north of San Francisco. It is not racially harmonious. It is a huge state. The state also feels like its own world, and every time I leave, even temporarily, I miss it. I am always happy to come back home. I was born and raised here, and very little could convince me to move to another state. Another country is a different matter. Story 71. You can live in Los Angeles and never set foot on the beach. Story 72. California is so diverse that people do not typically make an issue of race. Of course, there are some incidents, but it is usually not a significant issue. Some counties, such as Orange County, are known to be Republican and right-leaning, and there are places where that tendency is common. Overall, the diversity in California is evident. Story 73. When I was growing up there, traffic was bumper to bumper and moved at 50 miles per hour. Just because it is rush hour does not mean you have to drive slowly. However, things have changed since I was a child, and many people born there have not learned that. Story 74. How much of the land is farmland, even close to the big cities, and in which other states would these cities be considered decently sized? There are many farms and ranches. People often think it is all cities or perhaps cities and some wilderness, but it is also farming country, as much as or more than in other states. Story 75. There are many country folk throughout much of California. Many people only see the state as Los Angeles and San Francisco. Most of the state is rural. Story 76. When you visit your out-of-state relatives as a child, you think they are super rich because their houses are so huge. I grew up in Southern California. My house was 1,400 square feet on a small lot. I went to Florida and stayed at a house in Tampa that was 3,300 square feet on an acre. That was in 1982. Today, that Southern California house is $1.4 million and the Tampa house is $700,000. Story 77. Someone mentioned it in a meeting the other day. Christmas does not really feel Christmassy. I am in Southern California. I am not complaining. I love it here in paradise. That is the only downside that came to mind. Story 78. When I was growing up, I thought schools with interior hallways in a multi-story building were only found on television. While I have now seen California schools like that, the majority of schools I have worked in or visited are single-story with outdoor hallways. Story 79. There is a huge variety of fresh fruits and vegetables year-round. They grow all over the state. Farmers markets in many cities and towns offer this fresh produce from nearby farms. The weather is divine in most places. Story 80. I live in San Diego, about as far south as you can get in the state before entering Mexico. If I drove north for 12 hours and did not hit traffic, I would still be in California and hours away from reaching Oregon. Story 81. The state's cultural diversity is unmatched. It offers the chance to try different foods, hear music from many countries, listen to family stories, learn about others' religious practices, and hear other languages and try to learn them. I moved to California from the Midwest and it was eye-opening. Attending a high school where Caucasian people were the minority gave me a valuable perspective on other people's lives. Story 82. There are so many sights to see. You can spend hours on the road and still be in the same state. Story 83. Los Angeles is just one of many cities, approximately 88 in Los Angeles County, which is very large. There are many beautiful suburbs in the mountain areas, in the beach cities such as the South Bay, and everywhere in between. Story 84. I grew up outside or at the mall. Living in Sacramento, there were only a few days a year you needed to be indoors. I was a competitive runner in junior high and high school, and we trained outside year-round. Same with cycling. Except for extreme rain, no weather kept you indoors. When my son was in high school, we lived in Colorado and sometimes spent whole months where the only time we went outside was to go from indoors to a car and then back inside. Every school I attended as a child had outdoor halls, so you went outside to go from class to class. My son's school had interior hallways and a tunnel under a road to connect parts of the campus. Growing up in pleasant weather is wonderful. Story 85. I live closer to the beach than most people in the country, but I almost never go because of traffic, lack of parking, and not having the time. Story 86. You can buy tamales from an abuela in any Home Depot parking lot. Story 87. As Californians, we really do not think about other states. Not in a bad way. We have our own world here, and it surprises my friends in other states that we do not have an opinion about them. Especially Texans, who seem to dislike us. They see us as rivals, but we do not even think about them. Story 88. Everyone thinks they know California, but they have no idea. We have lakes, beaches, mountains, cities, and desert. I live north of Sacramento, and it is vastly different here. Story 89. I have traveled all around the world. There is no place I would rather be. When people ask where I am from, I do not say the United States. I say California, the fourth largest economy in the world. I love this great state. Some people dislike us because they are not from here. It has everything. Mountains, deserts, snow, sand, and 840 miles of coastline. It is called the Golden State for a reason. California is the best. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.